Good afternoon, or good morning, or maybe good evening, depending where you are. Welcome to the first panel of today's EEX Digital Summit. First, please allow me to introduce myself. My name is Hiroshi Okuyama from Skipping Stone, Japan. I will be the moderator of this panel. In this panel, we're going to discuss fundamentals behind the Japanese power market. I am happy to welcome and introduce today's wonderful panelists. First, from Tokyo, Mr. Takahiro Izumi-san, Tohoku Energy Trading. From Singapore, Mr. James Whistler, Simpson Spence Young. And also from Singapore, Mr. Ken Hasegawa-san, Societe Generale. And from UK, Mr. Richard Everett, Trayport. And from Germany, Mr. Stefan Riediger, EEX. Good to see you all. Okay, the first topic is the overview of the current state of the Japanese power market. Before anything, we cannot talk about Japanese power market without talking about the recent historical movement of JPEG's spot market. Takahiro-san, I understand there's some sensitive areas, but can you explain as much you can what caused the recent JPEG's price hike?
Sure, thank you so much, Hiroshi-san. I am Takahiro Izumi, General Manager of Fuel and Power Trading Department in Tohoku Energy Trading. We are a trading company 100% owned by one of the major Japanese utilities, Tohoku Electric Power Company, and we are the most active trading company in Japanese power market. Our main product so far now is bilateral OTC physical power derivatives, including EEX futures and fuel derivatives so on. Let me briefly summarize what happened in Japanese power market this winter so far. Until the middle of December, JEPX spot price was around 5 to 6 yen per kilowatt hour, which was equivalent to 45-47 euro per megawatt hour. The market was totally quiet and relatively cheaper compared to normal winter season. However, JEPX spot price rallied to 20-30 yen per kilowatt hour on 15th of December on power supply shortage in Kansai, with the inflows of cold air into Japan. And this kind of power price spike on seasonal demand is typically seen elsewhere in the world. However, afterwards, the story was totally different this time in Japan. The major utilities announced to limit the output of some of their gas-fired power plants to the minimum level. For example, in total 6 gigawatts, output was limited from the supply on 26th of December, mainly because of the shortage of gas importation against the pace of ongoing gas consumption. The JEPX spot price continued to stay at this spiky level of 20-30 yen, even after Christmas to year-end New Year holidays, which is normally less power demand weeks in Japan. On the other hand, in LNG market, a wave of massive buying by China, South Korea, and Japan shot up the spot LNG price from $12 to almost $40. So gas inventory shortage and sky-high LNG price, these two factors brought huge short covering in JEPX by hundreds of retailers. So JEPX spot price 24 hours in Tokyo area recorded 52 yen on 4th of January, 63 yen on 5th, 82 yen on 6th, 90, 99, 112, 160, and 167 yen on 13th of January. The most expensive half-hourly slot traded was 252 yen, extremely volatile and wild move so far. So back to you, Hiroshi-san.
Wow, what a move. Jim, you want to add something?
Well, as you've just heard, I mean, it's been quite an unprecedented volatility in the markets at the moment. What I would add is that that's obviously translated into what we've seen in the futures markets. I think I may have gone viral on LinkedIn by posting the fact that we think we've broken, I think, the highest baseload electricity futures contract in the world ever for Japan Power. I believe at the time it was 58.5 yen kilowatt hours. Of course, we had a bit of upside from there again. So I believe the highest point actually traded at 95. So quite unprecedented times. And for me, you know, it just highlights why we need a futures market and why people, like the people we have on the call today, are working quite hard to try and develop it.
All right. Thank you both. Okay, next topic is how the physical market works in practice. So let's discuss the current stage of Japanese power physical market structure. Maybe we start with from a standpoint from an international player. Stefan.
A pleasure, Hiroshi. I mean, what we see in the physical market in Japan these days is some of the flaws that we have seen in other markets that have evolved over time into a liquid futures market as well. People go to the spot and procure the electricity that they need in order to ship it to their retail clients or to their industrial clients. So at the moment, only really large corporations, and we've heard that from Tohoku EPCO earlier from Takahiro-san, really apply proper hedging strategies and risk management practices. So what the past few weeks have shown is that the importance of risk management and the importance of applying proper hedging strategies was never more important. And this is where we need to work together as an industry. And I mean, James plays his part as a broker. Ken will later on explain what clearing banks can provide, but also Richard, I mean, I think you can comment, I mean, how other markets, particularly here in Europe, have evolved, because it's up also on technology providers such as Trayport to connect the market, to increase transparency. And to be honest, I mean, to me, it doesn't really matter at this stage if it's a physical trade on a forward or a financial trade. I would say every trade is a good trade in these days because it shows that people apply proper hedging and risk management. Richard, what's your thought here?
Yeah, I think absolutely, Stefan. I think the thing that with the physical power market is perhaps pretty fortunate is that the index that the financial products trade off is probably the best index you can have. It's based off this huge transparent auction, and the financial market is then very closely tied to the physical market, much more in some other markets where the financial product might be a phoned around assessment, whereas in power it's based off what's actually happening under the physical, and that means it's very fungible. It's a really good hedge against the physical. It's a perfect hedge against the physical. And that's what we've seen in Europe. So in Europe, the market developed, it was bilateral, it was physical. And it came through that over its development over the last 20 years. But as financial products came in, because they're based off the same physical underlying auction as the physical market, actually they're completely fungible. And today traders in Europe were around 60% physical bilateral, traded on voice and electronic platforms, and then around 40% financial. But for a trader, they look at it together in the same screen and they trade it as one product. So I think the great thing about this market and what EEX have brought in is a market that works both for the physical players and financial players who want to access the market and can access it easier than if it was a physical market.
What about Jim?
Yeah, I agree. I think, one of the things that we really like about the Japanese market is the JPX underlying, and that is fundamentally a voluntary market. If you want to go bilaterally like they have done in the past, you're welcome to do that. But if you want to access transparent pricing and you get the comfort that you're getting the same price as the person sitting next to you, these markets are the way to do that. But of course, you then have to take the volatility that comes with these markets. And that's where futures come in. So I think, moving away from the way things have been done in the past in terms of bilateral arrangements, it only really works when you have both of those things in place. And that's what we've seen at the moment, is that people have been able to go into the market, hedge forward, and be able to avoid some of the pain. Now, obviously, the futures market being relatively new, not everyone would have been in that position. But one of the things we've also seen over the last couple of weeks is that people have been thinking forward as well. So, in fact, just before I sat down, people are trading summer 21, and we're now looking at another, sort of winter 21 as well. So I think from that perspective, it's an indication to me that, you've got the building blocks in place. Now you just need to, educate people as to how to use them. But to be honest with you, people pay for their education, and they're paying for it now. So they'll remember this next time, and they'll go back in. And next year, what would be a great outcome is that if these prices go back up again, then this becomes an all part of the business. Volatility is not a problem, provided you have a liquid futures market. I mean, a good market to look at there is Australia. You have a market that's heavily at risk of drought, for example. And when the futures market started really trading in good volume, it was because of a drought. Now, a drought in Australia is really equivalent to a gas short, cold winter in Japan. So it's a really good example of how these markets use both sides to really start getting going and give everyone comfort in the market.
Thank you, Jim. So what about Takahiro-san? I think you are deeply involved in the physical market as well. So can you add something?
Yeah, as I said initially, we are trading both bilateral OTC physical power and EEX futures, both of them. And at this stage, yeah, more people start paying attention to EEX futures. However, I would say most of the trade are still done in bilateral OTC markets so far. The size of the market, I would say, if EEX is 1, I think at this stage, the size of physical market still in OTC market, it's still 20, I would say. However, we have the problem of credit management. Probably this would be the next topic, I believe, because we have 600 retailers in Japan. It's very difficult, not easy for us to provide credit to all of them. So I do hope this EEX futures would give us a good solution to the market. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Well, about the credit matter, we will talk about later at the end of this panel. Before then, let's talk about the futures derivatives market. So overall structure, liquidity, players, and so forth. Maybe Jim, you can add something about the derivatives market, players.
What I would start off with saying is that EEX have done a fantastic job at really bringing in both sides of the market, in the sense of people who are willing to sell into the market and people who are willing to buy out of the market at different points in time. We deal with people across the world for Japan Power. It really is a very diverse group of people, everything from generators and retailers to speculators, all of which play their part in the market and make the world go round. I think we have obvious champions of the market that really help push things forward. But as Stefan will, I'm sure, talk about, we get inquiries about new people coming into the market almost daily at the moment. Particularly people who they make it their business to be able to take on risk from people who are risk adverse. The speculators of the world play a very, very important role. I think, if you look at other markets like maybe equities or, whatever it might be, speculators get a little bit of a bad rap in terms of, volatility they inherently create. But, commodities futures markets absolutely need speculators in the market and people who are willing to take the risk or people who don't want it. And that's something that we've really seen people really showing strong interest in it. I think probably the state of the market at the moment, look, January has been a great month in terms of volume growth for obvious reasons, but I also think that you've got the participation there to facilitate that uptick in volume when you need it. So it's certainly something we hope and we believe will just keep carrying on and going month by month. As Takahiro-san said, I think the fact is, though, that even if we did, I think so far in January we're about sort of 700 gigawatt hours in so far in trading volume, but that's a fraction of the OTC market. And ultimately, we're talking about Japan as the largest single market in the world for power. So there's an awfully long way to go to be able to provide the sort of liquidity that the JEPX, operating at say a 45 to 50% of total needs to have. So a long way to go, but absolutely the building blocks are in place to be able to support this market as it goes forward.
Thank you. Ken-san, you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you, Hiro-san. My name is Ken Hasegawa, working in SocGen Singapore and as a commodity sales, mainly in energy. And with SocGen is a GCM, General Clearing member of EEX. We have been active since 2004, and our market share on EEX is more than 20%. Our clients, such as European utilities, non-European utilities, oil majors, commodity trading house, and finance, actively trading power futures in Europe. And some of them have been already participated in Japan power futures, and some others are expected to be followed. And also, I'm sure that some Japanese clients may start trading this Japan power futures soon this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken-san. What about Stefan? You want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to add on what James just said, right? I mean, what we are seeing is that liquidity indeed in the past few weeks have increased significantly. Yeah? I mean, as James said, I mean, as of today, I mean, we're looking at roughly 700 gigawatt being cleared now in January, which is more than the total of the 6-7 months that we've seen before. And what we have observed is it's a classical development that we have seen in other markets, also in Europe, which have turned into highly liquid and globally traded markets. It typically trades some front runners from the generation side, from Japan, where we are very, very happy that we have seen support from the utilities from day one since we launched the market. Then you need really experienced international traders that come in, being kind of like the first or second movers, as they have the experience in trading markets around the globe. And then once initial liquidity develops, obviously it will attract further traders from around the world. And today, looking at the market now, we have traders from all over the world active already in Japanese power, also in the cleared space. And if I listen to Izumi-san saying that the physical OTC market is 20 times larger, I mean, that's not a surprise. I mean, this is the typical evolution of markets, right? And as Richard said before, it then goes like step by step from physical OTC into financial clear, because it's just much, much more easy to trade with people on a single stream through the brokers, because you don't have all these obstacles of signing papers, running credit risk assessments, and so on and so forth. So I think there is an evolution in the market that we observed, which is pretty much in line what we've seen in other markets, just at a much, much faster pace. And also the impact. I mean, look at the size of the market. Obviously, Japan power is twice as large as German power when it comes to physical underlying, right? So it's not only developing faster, also the impact will be much, much bigger than the markets here in Europe. Richard, would you echo that?
Yeah, and we're seeing the same, that we're seeing players come in from all over the world to access this market, and local players. So we have both traders from Japan and brokers who are setting up to use technology to help bring buyers and sellers together. And I think it's important when people talk about power futures, quite often you think of futures and you think of something that trades on exchange anonymously. And when you think of the market structure of power contracts, EEX in Japan have around 80 contracts listed. When you think of Kansai, Tokyo, base peak, then weeks, months, quarter, seasons, there's a huge amount of contracts. And out of those 80, I think there's around 50 that have had activity on already this year. And because of those huge number of contracts, the liquidity actually gets spread around quite a lot. And it makes it very hard for anonymous electronic matching to happen. And that's where interdealer brokers like James's company, but a wide range of other companies have come in to the market, and they're there to really help that role of bringing together buyers and sellers across this huge set of contracts. And then, but even though it might be on away from the electronic order book, you still get transparency. There's still bid offers on an electronic platform. You still get the voice brokering alongside to get deals done. So I think you look at the market and how far it's come in 4 years in Japan, from people really learning about what's been happening in Europe to get into a point now where there's local players, international players, exchanges, clearinghouses set up, all coming together to have electronic trading happening is a great place to be.
Thanks, Richard. I absolutely like to echo that. And I mean, the headline of today's summit is building markets together, right? And I think, this is actually what you were just saying, right? Because I think for us as an industry, everyone active, also here on the panel, people listening in, I think it's quite an achievement that we have brought the market to a stage where it is now, right? Because I remember very well when I first looked at this market in 2016, and also the discussions that we had 2018, 2019, that was still a question of which kind of standard products should we actually trade? Which kind of standard products does the market want? Domestic, Japanese requirements versus international standards, yeah? And I think we have come to a stage where the market has shown that it can build a market together if all parts of the value chain contribute their part and play their part, yeah? And I think taking it forward, I think it's going to be a very, very liquid market, yeah?
Great. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to our last topic, actually. We'll talk about the risk management. Actually, as myself, I was in futures business for many years. So I think there's no better time than now to discuss about the benefit of using futures from the risk management standpoint. So I'd like to start with Ken-san, as you're a clearing broker. How would you describe the risk management and the credit risk in the futures?
Yes, thank you. Actually, I've worked in futures industry about 20 years. Then I'd like to talk a bit about the futures and the clearing today. As all you know, the main purpose of using futures is to hedge the price risk. And then normally, the company may have exposure on commodity price. For example, power producer may have a long position on power price, while power provider may have in short. As we have seen skyrocket in spot market recently, as Hiro-san said, this is the best time for everyone to reconsider how you manage your exposure on price going forward. And secondly, as Izumi-san said, by using clearing, you can completely remove from the counterparty risk, which should be also seriously considered. And you can only face to your clearing member. Clearing house calculates daily mark-to-market and settle credit and debt with each clearing member every day. After financial crisis in 2008, were known as Lehman shock. A lot of OTC transaction, not only in the commodity side, but also financial side, has become cleared in clearing house. And nowadays, not only big firm, but also newly established company is quite using a clearing in globally. Then I also would like to recommend everyone to reconsider having a clearing account, taking this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken-san. What about Takahiro-san? You want to add?
So two things from myself. One thing is when everyone is bearish, you have to be bullish, right? I believe everyone learned it from this time. And second thing is Japan is island country. We don't have no direct pipeline. So we have to import all the gas, coal from overseas. So we do have to hedge at least 1 month or 2 months before the delivery. That's from myself. Yeah.
Thank you, Takahiro-san. What about Stefan?
Yeah, I mean, the importance of clearing was never more prominent than in these turbulent weeks in the market. Yeah, and I think as we've discussed before, yeah, I think there is also a learning curve in the market. I mean, we have seen markets also here in Europe, like the Italian power market or the Spanish power market or other markets around Europe, which have been almost physical bilateral exclusively until mid 2010, yeah, and then 2015 going forward until today. These markets have transformed into almost fully financially cleared markets, and there is still the possibility for generators and off-takers to take on the delivery or the consumption from the physical market, because as Richard Everett explained before, there is a perfect hedge between the financial future and the physical spot market underlying. And I think that is something that we will surely discuss more in the Japanese market in the weeks and months to come, because turbulent weeks like that obviously open the eyes in for many people about the importance of risk management and risk mitigation.
Oh, thank you. Richard, Jim, you want to add something? We have a few minutes left.
I think the only thing to echo the points about how bilateral markets and cleared and exchange markets can sit together is that what we've seen over 20 years in Europe is the market evolved from 100% bilateral to an evolution both in the power and gas markets where it's 50 to 60% bilateral and then 40% cleared. But the participants within those markets, the local generators, they generally trade a mixture of the two. And as I said before, quite often they treat them as fungible products. So for some firms where they have really good relationships, the bilateral market works best for them. But it doesn't mean that they don't also execute and trade within the financial market alongside. And that's what we expect to see in Japan as the market evolves. But what we do see is that particularly when new participants want to come in, so firms from in Europe, firms coming in from the US or from other global places, you do see that the financial products are really key to allow that level of participation, because getting set up physically within a country and bilaterally to trade in is a very difficult process. So the advantage is of what's been set up in Japan is that you have the option for both supporting the local market and supporting global players who want to come in and trade in the market as well.
Well, I would just echo that, Richard, as well. I think, for me, there's two main reasons why, futures and cleared products work so well. One is that something we've lived with, I think everyone on this panel certainly has lived through these big events. I mean, for me, I started my career and suddenly Enron blew up, and then credit suddenly became this thing, and it became an issue. And that's a long time ago. And then we had, of course, the global financial crisis. that again reminded everyone why clearing was important and credit was important. Of course, 2020 with the coronavirus and the volatility we've seen even before we've seen it in the Japanese power has been astoundingly volatile on the downside as well. So I think those are the sort of things that just consistently remind people why central clearing is so important and allows markets to function. The other side of it is what we touched on before, and the fact is that, you know, with Japan pushing for independent retailers, you've got 600 independent retailers now. So, I mean, that in and of itself is unmanageable from a generator's perspective. You can't manage 600 people's credit lines. It just becomes unmanageable. So that in itself just pushes things towards cleared markets.
Okay, great, thank you. So we have 15 minutes remaining, but we are now going to answer some questions from the audience, and we're going to live. We see you soon.